Hi everyone, I'm here to talk about comprehensible input, this revolutionary new way of learning languages that really is what Elan is all about. And to start off, when we think of traditional classes, we often think of grammar exercises, vocabulary drills, rote repetition. I remember when I was learning Spanish, my teachers asked me to conjugate in the present tense. Yo, eres, down the line. And when I was learning Chinese, we were asked to write these characters, line by line, over and over again. And so for the longest time, I thought this was a stepping stone to learn languages. But it often felt boring and repetitive. And so I started thinking, why is it that after 4 years of formal language training, people can barely hold a fluid conversation, let alone read a newspaper? And yet, after 3 to 6 months of immersion, they come back with these crazy language abilities. What is it about immersion that makes it so effective, and can we replicate it? It's called comprehensible input, and the answer is yes. Comprehensible input. This is a term coined by leading linguistics scholar Stephen Krashen, and he states very simply that as long as we understand the gist of a message, be it a newspaper article or a TV show, our brains will naturally deconstruct the underlying grammar patterns and unknown vocabulary simply through context and repeated exposure. So how does this work? Consider how a 5-year-old can speak perfectly fluent English despite not knowing the present tense, past tense, or conditional tense. If you think about it, every baby starts off by listening to input. Simple words like mommy, daddy. And once he understands that, the parents move on to a little bit more complicated sentences and more complicated ideas. Over time, he's able to piece together the parts of the language and begin communicating. But interestingly enough, all this hinges on taking an input that you can understand. Hence, we say comprehensible input. And so to give you another example, how did you learn the word entrepreneur? Most of us can't explain why we know the word entrepreneur. It just clicks. And so what really happened was initially we had no idea what it meant. Then you heard it on the street. Then you hear it in a newspaper. You see it in a newspaper, then you hear it in a news station broadcast. And each exposure, your brain is given a clue. A little bit of intuition as to what the word means. Strung together over time, it becomes automatic understanding. That's why when I say the word entrepreneur, it just makes sense. Comprehensible input has been an idea that's been around for about 40 years. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest its superiority over traditional methods. In fact, we've run a lot of tests that conclude the same results. So the question is, why hasn't anyone applied it? The problem lies in the fact that it's very, very difficult to continually supply learners with comprehensible input even as they progress in level. And so this is where Elan comes in. What we're doing is, using our methods and our research, we're able to pinpoint exactly where the student is. And this way, continually supply him with optimal input. From the materials, to the curriculum design, to learning aids, all the way to the class activities, every single minute is designed so that you're maximizing input and thereby maximizing your ability to learn a language. The part we're most excited about is this idea that we can use organic content to teach languages. Note that comprehensible input makes no mention of grammar lists or vocabulary drills. Really, all you need is content that you can understand. And what we're doing is we're using TV shows, movies, and books to teach language. And so tackling language learning not only from a scientific standpoint, but also a motivational standpoint. Now, when you say, hey, we can learn using this method, people are interested. And it's this personalized approach that allows Elan to achieve remarkable results, such as getting someone to read a newspaper in 3 months. So that's it for comprehensible input. Next week, I'll talk about how this method directly applies to ABCs. Those who grew up speaking Chinese with their parents but can't read or write. I'll go into my story of how I use comprehensible input, why I learned Chinese, and how I became fluent in a year. So thank you everyone for listening, and stay tuned for next week.